All right, I am going to jump into a lecture on some stuff I've been reading about. We don't have time to get into everything, so I just kind of made this little extra credit thing. I started reading a couple of things, a couple books. This book here, Impossible Subjects, won a whole bunch of awards. And it got me into this question of like, well, when did tons of Mexican Americans come in, or tons of Mexicans come to America, and why did they come? And that led me into that book and also to this book, Villa and Zapata. And there's a lot of really, really interesting, really interesting stories, almost like a soap opera, but it gets into why so many Mexicans have come to America. So let's jump in. We're going to kind of start closer to us and then come back all the way back to like the 1880s or so. So when did a lot of Mexicans start coming in? They started coming in with this program called the Bracero program. And basically just a temporary worker program. And it all of this got started because of World War I and World War II sucked so many soldiers out of being workers and into being soldiers that obviously there was a lot of farms that just needed the help. As you can see on this slide, designed to solve the labor shortage, 4.5 million Mexican workers crossed the border. Some of them came through this legal program. Some of them came just illegally walking across the border. There was no border wall at that point back in the 1900s. But there is kind of an interesting thing that, these people came legally, and obviously they worked hard. But according to my research, this is pretty crazy. During the 1920s, 1/8 of Mexico's total population came to the United States. So there's actually labor shortages in Mexico. Okay, in 1930, less than 20% of the Mexicans here were born here. So like 80% of them had just recently come. So that was pretty crazy. Okay, between 1920 and 1923, the Mexico government was actually working with the United States and trying to get people to come back to Mexico to repatriate them. That fancy word, repatriate. Now this gets a little dark. That when the Great Depression comes in 1930s, of course, now we don't have enough jobs in America, and basically the government started sending people back. Okay, 400,000 Mexicans during the early 1930s were repatriated or sent back from LA County, but just that. This book is saying, this book right here, Impossible Subjects, is saying that an estimated 60% of children were American citizens by native birth. They had been in the United States for 10 years. So I've never heard of some big lawsuit or anything to get some of that money back, but that's kind of crazy that probably some of those 400,000 people did not need to get kicked out, should have been stayed because they were born here. They were citizens. So, of course, that talks about the Bracero program. It doesn't really answer the question of why did so many people start coming to America. Obviously, the simple answer would be jobs, but there was some push and pull factors, and there was people being pulled here because of the good, better jobs, and the farms down in the Southwest were getting bigger. They're kind of getting more corporate. So that's one thing. We do got to talk about next about this Immigration Act of 1924. But I'm going to pause the video for a second.